All right, so we are streaming live, it looks like.
Good to go?
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. Call to order the February 2nd, 2023 Northgate Redevelopment Advisory Board meeting. Welcome, everybody. Can we do roll call?
Okay. Jared Roberts,
Here.
Mark Adams,
Here.
Nathan Levine,
Here.
Mike Alley,
Mike, you're muted.
Oh, I think he's frozen.
I think he's frozen.
So
He's here.
Mike's here.
Scott Cantonline,
I'm here.
Deacon Lucas,
Here.
Mike White,
No, Mike.
I think he's joining.
Oh,
He's here. Okay, that's everyone.
okay. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So move.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Can I get an approval of the minutes from the October 6th, 2022 meeting?
So
Motion.
moved. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Minutes approved. First thing this morning, guys, we have Mr. Peterson here for some public comment. Is he here, Irma?
I don't see him in the meeting yet.
So can we just come back to that then, or
I think so, yeah.
Sarah?
That's really up to the board. If you want to come back to public comment, that would be a board decision. Or if you want to move on, that's up to you.
Does anyone see a problem coming back if the public comment person shows back up?
That's fine. I think that works.
Yeah,
I'd
no
like to hear
objection.
from them. Okay.
No concerns.
Excellent. Action items. We have an election today. We'll start off with me. I'd like to remain the chair. If someone would like to.
I'll nominate Jared as president of the board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Approved. I'm still chair. All right. Thanks, guys. Then we'll move on to the vice chair. Current seat is Mark.
And I am interested in continuing.
I would nominate Mark. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Approved. Congratulations, Mark.
Yeah, back at you.
Yeah. Okay, so we got budget recommendations with Michael Brown. Mike, welcome.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I will share my screen here.
Okay.
And we'll get started. Okay, so I got the date right. That's always a first indicator that the day may go well. So first off, before we start talking about some of these topics, the last board meetings I had with other advisory boards, I made the error in assuming that everyone was very familiar with the topic of excess value growth and tax increment. And before I launch into this one, is everyone comfortable with those terms, or is there a review that would be useful?
I'd appreciate a review.
Sure. Okay. Well, when a URA gets created, there's kind of four big things that happen. One is that the geographic boundaries are set for where you're allowed to spend money. The second thing is there's a master project list that is adopted. The third thing is the URA declares how much indebtedness it's allowed to take on to fulfill those projects. And then the fourth thing that happens is the assessed value of the geographic area is frozen. And then as time goes on, all of the additional assessed value, it goes into the URA's tax increment, and that is what is used to fund the debt used to pay for those projects. And Sarah, please, if I missed something, don't hesitate to correct it. So with that concept, then the growth of excess value within the URA boundaries is kind of a good indicator, an important indicator that first off, that there is growth happening, and secondly, that the projects that the URA is undertaking is having a positive impact. So this first slide here is a 5-year snapshot of the excess value growth that the Northgate URA has seen and is projected to see in 2024. Last year, I think it grew by, I want to say 8%, or maybe close to 8%, a little over 8%. So that's a good thing. So from that growth, of course, there's also tax increment that is collected. So essentially, we're talking about the nominal tax rate that everybody sees on their tax bill, expressed in mills. I think it's expressed in mills in Oregon. It is in Pennsylvania anyway. And then that collects increments, and it's from that increment we use to fund the debt. So you can see back in 2020, we collected about $3.7 million. And in 2024, I'm estimating we'll be able to collect about $4.6 million. And again, that's going to track pretty much in line with the growth of the excess value. So essentially what happens, what this means is that a little over $4 million a year is a pretty comfortable number for this URA to take on annually to pay for projects. So speaking of max indebtedness, there's at the end of fiscal year 24, that would be on June 30th of 2024, the URA will have about $8.4 million left that it can issue in debt. So if we assume a little over $4 million a year, then essentially it's going to reach its max indebtedness in fiscal year 26. So if there's no other questions, we'll go on to the details of what fiscal year 24 looks like, spanning July the 1st of 23 to June 30th of 2024. Okay. Give me just a second to pull up the other thing. And I hope everybody has a spreadsheet up on their screen. Is that okay? I see a couple nods there. That's good. Thanks very much. All right. So the top of this is what is the debt fund, Fund 220, which is what we just talked about. That's where all that tax increment comes in. As I said, the anticipation for fiscal year 24 is we're looking at about $4.6 million. And then I've got in here to issue as the debt of $5 million. That can be lowered if necessary, if we don't quite hit $4.6 million. But by doing so, it would leave about a little less than $1 million in the debt fund at the end of the year. Then we go to the construction fund, which is where you actually get to spend money. And again, in fiscal year 24, I show here the $5 million from the de jure spending, or the de jure borrowing. and then we go into the projects themselves. So of note here, I went a little bit too far. The indirect cost allocation plan, that's the URA's share of city services such as IT and HR and other odds and ends, legal. That's falling, which is good. Project coordination and support, that's what pays for Sarah's time and others' time to do various and sundry things in support of the URA. And then we just go down the list here of the different projects and the recommended funding levels for those projects, which I won't go line by line, but down here you'll see at the bottom right-hand corner that what is unspecified now is a little over $9 million. Obviously, there are future projects on the master list that will need to have money spent on them. So it's that's not like having a lottery ticket, but you know, essentially the URA's got plenty of capacity to carry out the projects, and Sarah is certainly more expert on individual projects than I am. So if there's no questions, then.
So what I would, if the board would like, what I was thinking, well, and if Michael, if you could just leave this up for now, I think that would be great just for this portion of the conversation.
Sure.
I'd like to, pardon me. I'd like to just walk through each of these and kind of where things are standing, just for a little bit of context. And then if we want to talk broader sort of future projects, then I can bring that up and we can swap out who's sharing the screen if that works. So I'll start with the rehabilitation grant program. So that's lines 80 and 81. As you can see, the way that Michael has it, which is really great, it's kind of showing on the top the new allocation. And I wanted to clarify something here. And then the bottom is sort of what's going to be rebudgeted. So it's just what we have right now that we're going to roll over. In your packets, I gave you sort of that quarterly update in terms of how our grant program is looking, and you know what's out there, what's pending, all that fun stuff. And so you know right now we've got about 1.5 million ish that has not been allocated. What I will say is it's actually a little bit higher than that. I have an infrastructure grant in there that I think will actually be able to move. So this might end up being a little higher, a little lower. It kind of depends on who takes out grants in the spring. As you'll see, we have kind of this million, but proposed is only 850. And normally we always put $1 million in. And really what this is it's a lot easier if we're going to pull from anything in here, just to pull it out of new allocation versus rebudgeted, because it's all the same bucket. It's just, we can't really pull it out of rebudgeted because we don't know how much we're rebudgeting yet. And where this comes into play is sort of the strategic project grant. And so as we get down here, what we're recommending is to put some more money into it. We still have 150 actually in that strategic project grant, but the funding source actually being our standard grant program, and sort of taking what's in excess, but for budgeting purposes, it's going to show 150 less of new dollars. Does that make sense? In essence, we're just taking from the regular grant program and we're going to put it in the strategic grant program. It's just how it shows up on here is we have to take it from new dollars versus rollover dollars. But at the end of the day, they're all the same dollars. So that's one of the proposals, I guess, is to continue funding that we're making in this budget. The $1 million to move over is part of what we've continued to do. We're still seeing a lot of activity with our standard grant program. And so, you know, I think as things are picking up and maybe hopefully prices start coming down, especially on construction materials, maybe we'll start to see a little bit more. So that's lines 80 and 81. Are there any questions about those before I move on? Okay. So line 108 is that infrastructure grant program rebudgeted, and you'll see the 750. That so we had planned to put funds in for that on 2 cycles. Nobody has taken advantage of it. But like I said, we actually have one pending grant right now that is taking advantage of it. So it's a vacant site. It's the intended uses is for people that need to run, water, sewer, all that kind of fun stuff, and they need it. So we might finally kind of be tapping into those funds. But for right now, we're just showing it rolling over because that hasn't gone through. And as everybody knows, anything under our infrastructure grant or our affordable housing grant is eligible under the standard grant as well. So it's just a way that we can hold those funds for those specific uses. So that's just rolling over what we have, but it might be a little bit less. Affordable housing grant, same thing. It's rolling over. I could see there being some interest in it this upcoming year. There's a lot of push, obviously, for continuing affordable housing, and a lot more tools and incentives that both the city and even through the legislative session I see coming forward. And so there could be something there. So we're just recommending going ahead and continue to roll that money over and making it available. Line 130 is that bike ped path we budgeted. This had gotten put in before we even did the maximum indebtedness. It was kind of looked at as being a precursor to what the city had done in kind of their master bike ped planning. And so ultimately this will probably end up tying to one of those projects when it makes sense to kind of move forward in conjunction with Public Works. So the funds are there for whenever sort of that starts moving based on kind of other things that are happening infrastructure wise in the area. Line 131, I wanted to kind of explain a little bit. So this is the Pine Street Railroad Plan. So what the board had done in January of last year is we had taken money out of line 144, which is the opportunity fund. And that's the fund where we had money set aside basically to help with any sort of development on that former Zamora site and kind of that larger idea. If we needed to bring in consultants, if we need to do any earthwork, if we need to do engineering, we would have funds available to kind of start that process. And what we had decided was we kind of need to talk to the railroad to find out, is Pine Street, the extension, really something that's feasible? And in order to do that, we needed to kind of put some money aside so that engineering could do some work and we could bring on our railroad consultant that could kind of expedite that conversation for us. And so we had put $200,000 into that because we weren't sure how deep those conversations were going to have to go. And for those of you that were able to have an informal chat with us in December, we didn't have a quorum. One of the topics that we were just kind of updating on in a chatting basis was just that the conversation with the railroad was one of which that in order to do it, the cost would be beyond astronomical. It would most likely impact other potential crossings in the area. It could lead to closures of other crossings or having to expand in ways that could, have a negative impact on businesses. It's nothing that even with, say, we have about 18 million left after this budget, technically, we couldn't do it. 18 million wouldn't even cover it. And so the conversation at that point was, it's not super feasible. And so let's kind of look at what we can do with this site. And if the railroad wants to come back to us and they want to negotiate, we can always have that conversation, but we don't want to hold up projects now that we've had those answers. And so what the recommendation is it doesn't make sense to keep money in this 131, this Pine Street Railroad Plan realignment or consultant kind of category, because we don't need them anymore. So what's being recommended here is actually just to put it back into the opportunity fund, which is 144, which is where it came from. So that's why you'll see there's 300 remaining in it, but proposed is 455. So it's just making that one whole again. So the money goes back to where it belonged in the first place. And to eliminate any confusion. Are there any questions about that one? Okay. So then if we go to 143, which is just after that, Michael was nice enough to put in a new so that everybody knows. And that's just money for the development of that site. We had said we were going to put 2 million aside to start working on that. So now that we have the railroad kind of thing situated, we wanted to make sure we've got some money in the budget. So now we've got sort of the site development as part of that opportunity fund. And then that 2 million, whether it's construction, whether it's incentives, whether it's site prep, you know, those are things that we'll be starting to figure out here this fiscal year, which is really exciting, I think, hopefully for the board to start talking about the future of that site.
You're still talking the Zamora site, right?
Yep, correct. I just gave it an address because, you know, we call it the Zamora site and we know what it is, but I just feel like for consistency and also for the public, if they're looking, it's like, what is that? And so we just added the actual street address. So in the budget, you'll see it referred to as 2640. On any documents, what I'll try to do moving forward is I'll label it as both, just for consistency. But yeah, that's all it is. And that comes right out of what we had planned when we did the maximum indebtedness process as well. So we're still staying on par with that. We talked about the opportunity fund. Oh, sorry, Mark.
What do they plan on doing to that site?
Oh, are you here for public comment?
I'm just here.
So you signed up for public comment. This portion is the board meeting portion, but if the board wants, we can finish this and then go into public comment, or if you would like to have public comment with this gentleman, then we can do that.
Let's go ahead and finish our conversation because we're right in the middle of it. If you would like to stick around and for public comment, we could get it in at the end of the meeting.
It's a question, not a comment, but I can stick around.
That'd be great.
So let's see, so we went through opportunity fund, industrial site readiness, so that's 145. That's the 50 that we set aside to do if we want to partner for some larger city, looking to see there's some infrastructure work that needs to be done. It could end up that as certain sites we see more development needs for, we could put that towards grants as well, or studies. It's, you know, it's kind of just for us to sort of either contribute to a larger study. If we have a particular site we want to look into in more depth, we can do that as well. I want to open it up to a little bit more flexibility. I think the initial intent was to do a study, a larger city study, and it feels like that just hasn't really moved forward. But I want to make sure we keep those funds for the board, because you all may want to move forward either to look at a specific area of North Gateway and what needs might need to be there, or if there's a specific site we want to look at or help contribute to in a different way, that would give us the flexibility to do that. So that's just rolling those funds over. Line 146 and 147 is where things get a little new and exciting. So that's the 17th Street at Silverton Road. The turn lane rebudget, so that's just rolling the 2.8 million over that we put in the budget a couple years ago. This project is moving forward very, very soon. We had put it on hold because obviously the design of this could be impacted if Pine Street were extended. And so collectively, the board decided, hey, we don't want to spend a bunch of money on design if we're going to have to go and change it and spend a whole bunch of more money. And so now that we have those answers, we can move forward on the project. But what I recently learned, and I have one of our expert project engineers from Public Works coming to your March meeting, is that we have 2 projects in the bond that are being funded that are in North Gateway, which I will say is a little unusual. For the most part, projects within urban renewals were pulled out because there are other sources, but these are 2 that actually made it. And so as part of this left turn lane, there is a bond project to do repaving. I believe there's some signal work, there's some infrastructure work as part of that. So we're going to be able to partner with that project and get more for our money, which is always really great. The downside is, I think, as everyone, especially on this board, knows, construction costs haven't really stayed, constant over the last 4 years-ish. And so, when we came up with this 2.8 million, that was back in 2018, and we had just done a standard 3% inflation rate. This project has gone up quite a bit. A new budget was just recently put together by Public Works. And so it's about an additional 3 million to do adding the turn lane and all the work that we were planning to do. And then we're adding in a little additional money to help with some of the infrastructure work. There's going to be some water line upsizing. This would not cover all of it by any stretch. It is being proposed by the bond or public works or utilities funds. They're still working out some of that. So our portion is maybe, I want to say maybe 40 to 50% of what the total project is actually going to be. So we're just kind of getting ours bumped up the list. The plan is actually to go out for bids. I think I actually just got the RFP in my inbox this morning. So we could have a contractor on board, hopefully in March or April for this particular project with the goal of construction 2025. So it's more expensive, but it is actually moving at a very quick rate of speed. And we're going to get a much bigger project because we can partner with the bond. And that's why I asked Public Works to come to your guys' March meeting, because I want him to really talk about these projects that they're doing, how they intersect with our work, and then for everyone to have opportunities to ask about not only the bond projects in this URA, but any other questions everyone might have about the various bond projects that are out there. Because there's sort of a 2025 cycle, and then the next cycle will be 2027. And we will actually be getting another project out of that one. It's not seen in here, but it'll be on Portland Road, and it'll be a match to some of the streetscape work that we were able to do several years ago. So it's going to be paving, sidewalks, things of that nature. It's also going to include upsizing and infrastructure work for future development, and that'll be from the underpass to somewhere. It could stop at Lana, or it could go as far as Northgate. That's still being worked out based on the budget. So that's another project that we're getting in the URA as part of sort of this broader bond situation that I just wanted to bring to your attention. But we can talk in detail on that one at March. But this did go up, so that's where you're seeing the money. Now, where is that money coming from? Because obviously we were very strategic in sort of future planning, and where we proposed taking this out of was the Pine Street realignment project. We had about 5.8 million set aside, which wouldn't be anywhere near enough anyway, as we have learned. And so rather than pulling from a potential project, we kind of internally said, well, we make sense just to take from a project that has, a very minimal chance of moving forward, and let's use those funds for, a bigger use. So that's where we're proposing those are kind of coming out of. It's not anything that was approved, but as a board, I want to make sure you guys know in the future planning, that's kind of where we pulled from.
Sarah, are the city, the bonded project, the scope of that significantly different from what we had envisioned?
So it's in addition to, so they didn't plan what we're doing. So we're just getting more than what we had planned to do. So the turn lane, the signal, that was kind of what we were doing. They're doing some extensive paving. There's going to be sidewalk fill-in as part of it. I think there might be some lights as part of it, some water line upsizing as part of it. Where we were just going to kind of do our little area, this is going to go out further. So it'll be a much more impactful project, I think, which will be really great. So we're marrying the two together now is what we're doing, so that it's not too separate, and we're finding those linkages. So it's just one nice big project. And then we'll have one contractor for all of it, which is helping even though our costs went up. And granted, we haven't gotten bids in yet or anything like that. These are estimates, but we do think that'll help our costs a little bit, just because we can combine the two into one and make it a bigger project.
Is there a way, have they allocated a certain amount of dollars to this?
Yeah. So in the bond there is, and then what's going on right now is there's a bond council. And so they're reviewing all the final costs, and if some things can be paid for, some things can't, what does that look like? And that's all just starting. But yeah, there's already funds dedicated for their portion of this. The only thing that they're still working out is some of the utility upsizing, and that's what we're working through right now. But it's a very small portion. I think it's maybe like 1.2 million out of a 10-11 million dollar project.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll definitely be talking about it a lot more, and we'll be bringing updates to you. But that's why I've got some of you remember Aaron Edelman was our engineer for the streetscape project when we did Portland Road, and he's the one coming to our meeting in March. He's in charge of kind of all the bond projects right now. Any questions? That was a lot on one item that I kind of just threw at you. So, but it's really exciting, and hopefully you guys are feeling good. We're finally able to get some stuff out of off the list and finally out to bid. So I think that'll be really exciting.
And Sarah, so did we have to ask for the Pine Street Railroad plan to go off of the budget, or is that just done? So
it's not in the budget. We haven't budgeted for it yet. So, we have our maximum indebtedness project list, and I can share that when we get through the budget here. And that was whenever you go through a maximum indebtedness increase, the requirement is we have to show how we think we might use the funds. So we can't just say, hey, we want another 15 million, but we don't really know how we're going to use it. Because we asked for an increase a few years ago, we had to say based on what we know to date, which was sort of 2017, 2018, these are the things that we think we might spend money on. And so whenever I say we're taking from one, it wasn't ever budgeted, but I want to be fully transparent that, some things on sort of that master list that we created 5 years ago, we're having to modify, and we have to make choices. And I think we've kind of always had that conversation. If we create a new program, or if a really exciting project comes up, that's great. It's just like, okay, where do we maybe want to pull that from in terms of future planning? Because we knew, in some ways it was going to have to be an organic document. Things were going to change, new opportunities were going to arise. What we are trying to do is, as those are coming up, is find out what does that align best with in terms of what is on that master list. So the intent is still there. If it was infrastructure type projects versus like grant projects, where we're trying to look at infrastructure, or, if we have money for property acquisition, but maybe we decide we want to throw it at a development, there would be an alignment there because it's development related and things like that. So that is kind of what we're putting into thought in terms of bringing, suggestions forward as we kind of work through some of these things. But no, there is no budget for it. So it's not as though we're taking it out and moving it. It's just in our own tracking and in our communications. What we will probably be doing in the future is modifying the urban renewal plan, assuming that the board is comfortable with that, to remove the Pine Street realignment as a project, so that there isn't that expectation, and we're asking sort of the same of Public Works to potentially take it out of the transportation systems plan. We don't have the funds for it, and then it does open up development for that site because there isn't a road that goes through the middle of it that's being planned for. So those are some of the things that we want to try and do, kind of clean up behind the scenes, just for consistency and to make sure that we're really transparent in what we can and can't do.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Like, did we have to say something to Public Works as a board to get it off of that plan?
No, I mean, I've already sent an email. So
Okay.
That's just an internal conversation. But if they don't want to, and ultimately it's not their decision anyway, it'll go to council and then council would approve it. Just like if we want to take it out of the urban renewal plan, it would go to the agency and then the agency would have to approve it. But right now I'm thinking like we probably wouldn't want to, I'm not thinking we would probably do that until late summer, early fall, kind of get through a few things and have some conversations. And then, maybe we can kind of do it all at the same time or something like that. So we're just starting to work through that, but we just want to make sure that the expectation is there, that the URA isn't going to have the money. If in 15 years, the railroad finally decides they want to do something, that's great. But it's just not something that we're going to have funds for. And so that there's not that expectation that we would. That's kind of where it is at the end of the day. Okay. And then after this, it's pretty easy. Opportunity purchase rebudget, that's line 148. So that's that if there's a site available and we wanted to purchase, or maybe there's, a large scale development going in that would grant, would make sense to do a larger than $300,000 grant. Maybe it would come from something like that, like we've done in downtown or something like that. So this is sort of that opportunity development purchase kind of area that we have. 149 is environmental remediation. That goes back to that 2640 Portland Road Zamora site. We know environmental work has to be done. We have the DEQ information. So it's just money that we're kind of holding to be able to do that or to contribute to, depending on the future use. And then lines 150 and 151 go back to that strategic project grant kind of mention that I made earlier. This is a new project. It's not something that we had planned when we went through the maximum indebtedness process. So along the way, we've kind of picked and choose where we were taking kind of future dollars from. So we've kind of tapped into all of our kind of future dollars under the affordable housing grant. And that's kind of how we got it started. We put 150 in it back in February of last year. And by June, we'd gone through all of it, which was great. We put an additional 150 in it in July. There hasn't been a lot of traction on it. I did provide a report on that as well. We do have one pending right now. And I do think this is one of those that's going to come in waves. You kind of get 5 or 6 and then it's going to kind of quiet off, and then we're going to get 5 or 6 and then it's going to quiet off. It's usually how this program works downtown as well. So we're trending very closely with how they seem to be going through dollars. And so the recommendation that staff is making is to go ahead and put another 150 into it. And then we'll kind of see how things go this next year. Do we get a lot of activity over the next year? Do we not? Does it make sense to, keep it going? We've only had it going for about a year and we've had a lot of success. But like anything, sometimes things need to be, modified, tweaked, or if the funds are needed somewhere else, we can always have that conversation. And so that's sort of what is being proposed and sort of the impacts of what's being proposed for this next fiscal year budget.
Does anyone have any questions on the 23-24 budget or comments?
I'd like to say that I am somewhere between surprised and taken back by the potential growth and capacity of the dollars. There, if you go back to Mike's earliest computer shot showing the change between 3 million to 4.6 million in just a few years, that's just a very dramatic change. And it's just exciting to see. Anyway.
Anyone else? Oh, I guess, Mike, did you have any more to say? We kind of jumped into the budget.
Nope, I'm silent.
Oh, okay. Any more comments? Well, I guess we can go ahead and vote, right, Sarah, on this to approve?
Yeah, it's if you guys are good with it. I mean, if I don't know if you want me to go through. I included the update on all the maximum indebtedness sort of projects. I think I pretty much outlined the impacts as we were talking through it. But if you're good without going through that, that is completely fine by me. Or if you have future questions on it. But it was just another resource. It basically shares what I shared kind of in the overview. So as long as you feel like you have all the information, then you can vote ahead.
Well, I know that, as things change, sometimes we have to go in and revisit the budget and, make sure that the new change is allowable based on categories and things like that. But with that understanding, I would move approval of the budget as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. 23-24 budget approved.
Thank you all.
Okay.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, real quick, do we still have Mr. Peterson here? Irma?
Yes, he's here.
Mr. Peterson, would you like to take your 3 minutes for public comment?
Yeah, I had a comment, a question about Portland Road. I have a business on Portland Road. I was wondering what was happening on that article there about the one I got shut down on, the question.
I thought you signed up for public comment. to
Well,
the
I just
board?
got him, and it don't matter, you know, I can probably get my question answered now.
Okay, what's your question?
What's going on at that Portland Road location?
On are you referring to 2640?
Yeah, my screen blanked out when you guys shut me off, so I can't see it anymore.
Right now, I guess right now we don't have a indefinite plan on paper. We have just budgeted money, sitting to find a tenant, correct, Sarah? And possible use.
Correct. So the city, the urban renewal agency / city purchased the property. It became up for sale because there is a future road that would go through the property, Pine Street. So it gave us the ability to go ahead and purchase it. And then that could influence development in the area. So in the interim, we have been leasing that site. And so it's been used as a sheltering space, and it's currently being used for administrative purposes for one of the homeless organizations. And so it's continued to have a purpose and a use for the community. And here within hopefully this next fiscal year, the board will start talking about potential future uses for the site, whether it's tenant-based, whether it's temporary uses, whether it's future development, larger development. That's sort of where we are. But we do have a tenant on the site, and it's helping contribute to sort of the higher goals of the city, which is obviously, you know, helping tackling homelessness.
Yeah, I got it. I thought somebody mentioned in the meeting that it was the car lot across the street.
Oh,
It was a car
car
lot before we purchased it. It had been a car lot, and it's been vacant now for probably about 4 years, I would say. Vacant in terms of not a car lot, but we've been keeping it as an active use.
For that, you know, so there's a car lot across the street, so it was confusing. So anyway, is there any plans to widen Portland Road up through to the old State Patrol office or
No.
beyond?
No.
Okay. I had somebody crash my sign, and it's going to be $40,000 to fix it. And the permit is, if it ever has to be moved, I got to pay for it. So that was a big concern.
So where's your lot located?
3650 Portland Road.
You're down by, okay, I know where you're at, yeah. Yeah, no,
So
at this point,
I
I think that widening Portland Road would have too much of an impact on all the businesses. And I don't know it's been on our radar at all. I think the main thing that we're worried about right now is just kind of helping the whole area just improve, you know, as far as new businesses, upgrading old businesses, things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing I see in that area would be, you know, sidewalk infill work, you know, repaving, things of that nature. But I don't think there's any funds around to be able to do any widening.
Yeah, this would have been my time to move the sign inside my complex, I guess. It's so expensive. I didn't have a grip.
No, if I may add my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Street widening doesn't do anything to remediate bad drivers. So.
Well, during the sale plan, I got a letter that I had but then it's illegal, like, and everything went back to normal.
Okay, well, we're going to move on. Thank you, Mr. Peterson, for your questions.
You bet.
And we do have a grant program if you need some help with your sign. Maybe look into that.
Yeah, I'd be interested. The insurance company is giving me a hell of a hard time.
Well, look into the grant program.
Okay.
Thank you.
How do I do that?
Just go to.
I can send you the link. I believe I have your email address, sir. And so I can send you the link to the website, and you can find all the information there. I'll get that to you today.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Right. Okay, Sarah, future meeting planning.
Yes, so
What do you
I
got?
mentioned this, but at March meeting, we're gonna have Aaron Edelman so he can talk through the two different North Gateway bond projects. So the one that'll kind of connect with our Silverton project, that's a 2025 construction schedule. And then the Portland Road, that'll be the repaving, the hopefully some utility water upsizing for development, filling in the sidewalks from kind of the underpass to either Lana, Northgate, somewhere in there, depending on how far the funds go. And so that's a 2027 construction schedule is my understanding for that one. So he'll be at our next meeting to talk through that. And then if you have any questions about any of the bond projects, which is why I wanted to bring it up, go ahead and start putting your thinking caps on, because we will have the expert engineer at our disposal. So that'll be at the next meeting. And then also I wanted to mention, because I know Mike Alley had brought it up previously, I am in contact with our parks folks on the Welcome to Salem sign. I believe it came up at our last in-person meeting before COVID hit, if I remember right. And there was kind of some tumultuousness going on between the city and the neighborhood association and the design. And it sounds like that's all been worked out. They came up with the final design, and they've basically gotten kind of the informal okay from ODOT, but as soon as they get the official permit from ODOT, we will have a representative coming to our meeting to share what that design looks like and what the timing is going to be. As you might recall, it's not in the URA and we're not contributing to it, but because it does kind of, edge the gateway to the area, they wanted to make sure that the board was aware of kind of what it looked like and was, on board with kind of moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome.
Any other updates?
I included in your packet a project flyer. It's for the Salem Industrial Drive rail crossing project that's happening this summer. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it. It is not a city project. It's an ODOT project. My understanding is it's a safety related project. So they'll be moving the signals so that it incorporates the spur. There'll be some paving, and it'll probably be about a 30-day project. It's not part of a wider sort of, rail project within the city. It's one apparently that the city and ODOT have been discussing for some time about some safety concerns. So I just want to let everyone know that was happening. And at the same time, my understanding is they will be making sure, obviously, no improvements are being made to Salem Industrial Drive at this time, but any needed improvements tied to development that is being incorporated so that there wouldn't be issues with the crossing and improvement, so that everyone's still talking to everybody for future development needs. So I just wanted to make sure y'all got that in your packet, because I think they were just sending it out to adjacent property owners. But we may not be paying for it, but it's still a great thing to have happen, I think, in the area. So I just wanted to make everyone aware. And then secondly, we still have a couple open positions, and luckily Nate has agreed to stay on until his is filled. So we are super lucky on that accord. But if you do know of folks, feel free to send them my way. And I'd be happy to direct them to the applications or answer any questions they might have.
Hey, Sarah,
Nate, you can't leave.
Yeah, Sarah, just one quick thing. You mentioned that in the city bond, there was a couple projects that would affect our area. When we have more information on that, that would be helpful to know what they're planning. So
Yep.
I know
That's
that
March.
Yep, Aaron
Will that be-
Edelman is
that'll be
coming
the
in March.
That,
Yep.
okay,
So
'cause you
yeah, so
mentioned
Aaron.
more than just the realignment. There was other stuff too. So
Oh yeah, so the realignment wasn't in the bond.
right. But no, it's great.
have-
It's great they'll accept it,
Yeah, we have no money for that one. But yeah, in the bond, there's the Portland Road kind of repaving, some infrastructure, sidewalk filling project, and then the Silverton that'll connect with ours.
Right.
So Aaron will come to our March meeting. I've already confirmed him, and he'll just go over the details of what those projects are. And then we'll have kind of this broader conversation, because there is going to be some additional funding needs, I think, and maybe where we might be able to kind of take from what projects, maybe don't make sense anymore that maybe did make sense 4 or 5 years ago.
Sure.
And having an opportunity to do any improvement, especially on Portland Road. I know this board historically really has wanted to move forward. We just never had enough money to do more of it. And I think this is a great way to get another little chunk out of that we didn't think we'd be able to do.
Good.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Sarah. And I guess we'll see everyone in March. Thanks for showing up, and meeting adjourned.